did damage to my vocal cords 2 years ago, and which my wife exploits quite often, if I speak too loudly for extended periods of time, my vocal cords will waver a little bit, so I may need some water to help cushion that. The other, in terms of latitude, I'm trying to, and I think Council appreciates, I'm trying to encapsulate 6 years of work and discussion and so on and so forth into a comprehensive thing. In preparing this report, the focus really became less about the technology and so on and so forth, and more about what, if I believe Councillor Russell had talked about. I've been waiting for 2 years to tell Mr. and Mrs.
Gene and Jack
Blow what this project is going to cost. And that's the very crux of the challenge that has been here. This is an extremely complex and challenging project. And it's why multi-municipal partnership projects like this aren't done a lot. And it was one of the things that when the application was made to Build Canada in 2008, that appealed to them, because they recognized that there were 3 municipalities that were experiencing similar problems and attempting to resolve those long-term problems by building one facility to meet those needs, as opposed to going on their own and building 3 separate ones. So bringing that together is a challenge, because there are different varying political interests. There are different varying financial implications for each. And so it is a challenge, and we've worked our way through those, not without bruising and difficulty, but we're here today. The genesis of why the project was initiated in the first place was simply number one, was the lagoons had reached their allocated capacity, or was close to reaching their allocated capacity. And at the time, the bi-municipal, which was South Huron and Lambton Shores, recognized that in the future, something that needed to be done with the sewage treatment lagoons. And this was not an immediate thing. They wanted to put it on the radar, so to speak. So that's how we started in considering this and developing a master plan. We thought it was prudent to invite our neighbor to the north, Blue Water, who was experiencing issues, to join in those discussions. So a master plan was developed, and a consultant was selected to come up with options. And that, one of the challenges, I see Chris Hutt here from the MOE, and he can, Council wishes you perhaps ask him a question, but one of the challenges when considering the various options that was before the joint board at this time, or the tri-municipal committee at the time, was we had an opportunity to do something new and innovative, and trying to think outside the box in terms of how can we solve this problem. We have this opportunity, let's explore them all. In the course of that discussion and dialogue with the group, it was tempered somewhat to the consultants because of the dialogue that they have had with the MOE about some of the experimental projects that have been experimented with from time to time. Some of them sound great, and some of them worked out. Their caveat to us, I'm not sure that's the right term, was you have to be careful if you're going to invest in and try an experimental approach to sewage development that's outside the normal parameters of MOE approval. It is always a conditional approval that's given to make sure that it achieves what its objectives are. If it doesn't achieve those objectives, the project can't be continued with, and you have to go back to a more conventional approach. So that weighted some of the discussion, but given that, the board considered, the joint board, tri-municipal committee, considered a wide range of options, combinations of options, and so forth, utilizing the lagoons, orbital systems, SBR systems, membrane systems, New Hamburg system, so on and so forth. And, worked our ways through that to where we are today with the double train full build option. And it was through that process as well, and thinking outside the box, that the green alternatives were presented to the board and tried to integrate into the philosophy to try and maximize new technology, innovative technology to help address operating costs for the facility. So, if eventually, it narrowed down to two options. One was the full build double train and full build single train, and yet the variables continued. And council's direction was that we get Watson and Associates, who are our consultants for water rates, sewer rates, development charges, to analyze various scenarios on how that sewage treatment facility could be paid for us, not our partners. To distill that down, we really began in earnest the end of November. Again, we tried a few prior to that. But again, the variables were always who was in, who was out, what option, so on and so forth, and what methods of funding, so on and so forth, would enter into it. So that's why you see the proposed full build double train option was presented, and this was the copy. You've got a copy of in the schedules of C.N. Watson's analysis, but basically we narrowed it down to who was participating in that, applied the grants. One of the variables that was in play, just as an example, was the Pinery Provincial Park, or the M&R's participation in the project. They had originally, in 2006, entered into an agreement with the municipality of Lambton Shores to participate in a joint project, the joint project that was evolving at that time, to a level of funding that worked out for them was about 13% of the capacity that was being used, and it worked out to about 1.4. Pardon me? For the Pioneer, $1.449 million. And we continued on. Council had a meeting on, meetings are flying by. When was the meeting? December 13th was the meeting with Watson. And in preparation for that, and trying to provide Gary with these defined numbers, we tried to vet the numbers and the calculations of everybody's contributions. And the Pinery one was one in which, so wait a minute, how did that number, where did that number come from? How was it arrived at? And so, unfortunately, with Peggy had moved on, and so I contacted John Swick from the Pinery Provincial Park, raised an issue with him about how that calculation was determined, and indicated to him that since the 2006 agreement, the plant project design scope had changed, and therefore the budget numbers, and was their level of participation, they would require approval of the M&R to change their participation. What were they willing to support their continued participation at the new tendered design cost? To dialogue in the following weeks after that meeting with on the 13th, got to the point with the officials at M&R that they were prepared to accept the full build and single train option tender prices, provided we deleted anything that had a piggyback factor, which they refer to as doubling up on grants. And in this particular instance, it was about the green energy component that was being funded. So that's how we arrived at, and there was a consensus that their level of participation for the single train was $2,029,000, I think it was, and $2,005,000 thereabouts for the full bill.
So I'll go through the whole thing, or you want to take a question there? John?
Just a quick one, John. What you were just saying there was that the contribution of Pinery to this project is considered by the government like a grant? Is that what you just said to me?
No. In terms of their share of this project cost, the government they're very cautious about double dipping for grants, and so that's all they wanted, some comfort that component was removed.
So a little bit of it would have done that, or not the whole cost? It's not thought. It's the pay to play principle, is it not? It is. It's a pay to.
About $750,000.
Oh, a portion of it. Okay. I just didn't know what.
All I'm illustrating here, trying to illustrate to you why it takes so long to firm these up. We weren't sure of, and there were still discussions and dialogue with the municipality of Blue Water about their involvement and participation, when that might be forthcoming. There were periods in which they were contemplating contributing their capital